Hello, every one of you. Hello. As you can see earlier, I was trying to teach myself how to sew. You can see the thread there, and I sewed on a button. I've always got to learn new skills every year and every day, and sewing is one of them. So, what were we going to talk about? UFC, MMA, and a question someone asked me about something quite recent that's going on, and I was having a chat with someone, and they were asking me about Urijah Faber. And the question that they asked me was, do I think that Urijah Faber will be a UFC champion? And it was a very interesting question, and I know it's a question that people kind of want to ask, so let's bring it out there. Let's talk to the people who watch UFC and watch WEC and who followed Urijah Faber's career all throughout the days of the King of the Cage, when I first kind of heard of him, when he used to do interviews on Between the Ropes all the time, when he was pretty much the guy for the weight classes outside of 155, the poster guy, the guy that was doing all the interviews and doing all the media. And in a lot of ways, if it wasn't for Faber, there wouldn't be, in my opinion, there wouldn't be that much of a future for those weight classes if it wasn't for a Urijah Faber, who really helped popularize the division, especially with his fight with Jens Polger. I thought that did a lot for the weight class, in my opinion. And he was a very charismatic fighter. When I first saw him, I used to hear his interviews, and then I saw him, and I looked at him, and I was like, this guy looks like one of the Von Erichs. Like, he looks like he's Kerry Von Erich's, love child. Like, this could be Lacey Von Erich's brother. This is really weird. He looks like one of the Von Erichs. That's kind of a scary thing. And I was like, man, this guy's a bit of a pretty boy. He has cane rows in his head, which I used to hate people who had cane rows in their head back in the day. For some reason, I used to find it really annoying. Like, Justin Timberlake, when he did that, if you remember that. And I'm ashamed to even say that I saw those pictures. But anyways, I saw him and I thought, oh, this guy's a pretty boy. 145, meh. And then I saw him fight, and I'll tell you what, I was impressed. The guy came to fight, and the guy came to put on a show. He wasn't a pretty boy. This guy came to scrap, and I appreciate that, and I enjoyed that. And he always was a very entertaining fighter. Even if you don't like him, you can't deny that this guy comes to fight. This guy comes to put on a show and have a war. And I felt that combined with his charisma and his good looks helped build that division up. And he was like the king of that weight class for a long time. And then, obviously, Mike Brown took him out. He eventually came back, had the rematch with Mike Brown, which was an absolute classic. Broke both bones in his hands and then tried to fight with his elbows. Lost to Mike Brown. Then he started to have a think over. Eventually came back again and fought Jose Aldo. And then lost to Aldo in a very dramatic fight, in my opinion, where the guy got his legs kicked from underneath him so much. And it was impressive just to see him continuing and trying to continue. I mean, I was very, that won me over, actually. After all those years, the most probably brutal loss of his career was the one that won me over towards him. And then he started talking about fighting at 135. And give us 2 seconds. When he started talking about fighting at 135, it was around the time that the WEC was now merged to the UFC. And this debate kind of has been going on, and now let's talk about it. The question that I was asked, do I think that Urijah Faber could be a UFC champion? Do I view him as an elite level fighter? Yep. Do I think he's one of the top fighters in the world? Absolutely. Do I think that he is... Now, how can I phrase this? Do I think that the biggest problem... What do I think the biggest problem is in him? What is the biggest problem that gets in the way of him being the UFC champion at 135 or even at 145? He's a very good fighter, very skilled, comes to fight, very charismatic, very likable, but he's in a similar position that I would say Junior Dos Santos is in, and maybe Misha Tate are in, where they're in divisions where they are undeniably, can't even say the bloody word. They are very talented and very skilled and very good at what they do, but even that is not, in comparison to the person that's at the top of their weight class, it's like, is that enough? I mean, I watched him fight Jose Aldo, and when they signed that fight, I knew right away Aldo would beat him. I knew Aldo would beat him. There's a significant difference there, and that's saying something about how good Jose Aldo is Aldo is that good. Now we talk about him going to 135, and I think that his chances of being a UFC champion were a lot higher when Dominic Cruz was 135 bantamweight champion, because he'd already beaten him before. He had that psychological edge over him, and the fight that they had 3 years ago was very close, where Faber could have won. It could have gone either way to either guy, and they were building up that rematch, and Faber looked impressive in his fight against Brian Bowles when he just took him out in the second round very, very impressively, and called out Cruz, and it looked like that was going to be the big fight to lift 135, kind of like their version of a KOTOR and Liddell fight for 205. It looked like it was going to be one of those fights that lifts the division up, and you have some stars created at 135, and you do need rivalries to do that, to build a division. But unfortunately, Cruz had that knee injury, and God rest his poor knees. I mean, I feel so sorry for the guy. He's, injured again, like with his groin pull, and if he, just to get this out there, man, I wish him the best. He must be feeling really down right now. But Faber was then put in a weird position because the big fight with Cruz was taken off of that big UFC show. He then is put in there with a very skilled and very dangerous Hernan Barral. And that fight happened and I watched it. And while it might not be the most exciting fight out there, I personally saw a difference in the levels between the two fighters. Barral is a very decent striker. I'm not calling him a world-class striker or a K1 striker. He's not Badr Hari or Manny Pacquiao or Floyd Mayweather, but he's a good MMA striker, very dangerous, quicker than Urijah, great takedown defense for someone that's not a wrestler, and a pretty nasty ground game. And I watched the fight, and I was looking forward to it, and I felt that Urijah couldn't get him down, and was struggling to get him down, and Barral in the striking blatantly had the edge. You could see it. He was quicker, his kicks were far more effective, he was moving around, and this is a guy that trained with a guy that beat Urijah Faber in Jose Aldo, so the advantage was there. And the one question mark you can say is that Urijah may have looked a bit slower because he had a broken rib in the fight. But I still wonder, without the broken rib, I don't know if he would have been fast enough to have got him down. And there's been a lot of complaint that Urijah gets too many title shots, but I do think he earns them because he does beat very good guys and very impressively. But that debate is still there. Can Urijah Faber, the guy that built the lighter weight classes, do the one thing that he needs to do to, if you want to say in some people's eyes, cement his legacy, and that's be a UFC world champion? And some people argue and say, well, when he was the WEC champion, that kind of does count, and you kind of do have the argument, but unfortunately you've got a lot of fans who don't know that and don't see that and don't buy into that, and they're just like, oh, So now Urijah has gone on a 4-fight win streak, I believe. Very impressive victories. The guy is submitting black belts, which is very, very impressive. I think that's the best aspect of his game, to be honest, is his ground game. But that's the one thing that he's going to have the hardest time with Hernan Barral. He couldn't get him down in the first fight, remember? And if he can't get Hernan Barral down and take the fight to where he wants it to go, he's going to have a very difficult time. And I believe that it will be a very similar fight if he can't take him down. Now, Urijah's striking has gotten better, and he's never had bad striking. He looked very good against the guy that is quoted as having a gift for the hands in Michael McDonald, and he took him out with stand-up, which was very impressive. And he looked very good in that fight. And then now he's, he was the number one contender, and now he's been thrown into the lion's den literally because of the Cruz injury. And you think about it and you think that Urijah is in a very difficult, tough spot, because this could actually be potentially his last UFC title fight in quite some time when you think about it. And I do wonder, considering the fact that Barral has had a full camp, Urijah has probably had a few weeks of training. He's fighting on the 1st of February. So what, maybe 4 weeks from the date it was announced? I'm not sure. Guys, help me out here. He's probably just come off that fight in December. And it's a bit worrying because you do need a full camp. And a guy like Hernan Barral, man, you don't want to play around. And I don't believe Urijah is playing around. I believe Urijah is a guy that trains consistently and trains constantly and is definitely going to work on his skills. Pardon me. But that's the one thing. It's like, if Urijah doesn't win this, Could that be his last UFC title shot? And MMA in some ways is a young man's game. Burrell is just getting better and better, and Urijah is getting older and older. And I don't want to say, oh, he's too old where he's not going to win, but there does come a time where that becomes a factor. And it does make me wonder, is Urijah Faber going to be a UFC champion? And if he can't win this fight, the future looks very, very bleak, because I don't see Cruz coming back and beating Burrell, to be honest with you. I do think that had Cruz stayed champion, that was Urijah's best bet. But who knows? I just want to know what people think there. Do I think he could be? Who knows what could happen on the night of the fight? Perhaps Urijah gets him down and subs him. Perhaps Urijah just catches him with a knockout. Who knows? But it's very, very bleak. And considering he's not having a full camp, that concerns me even more. But that doesn't make him any less of a man, in my opinion, or a fighter. Great fighter, favourite fighter of mine to watch, and definitely a pioneer. But the one thing that is missing from his career is that UFC title. And can he win it? I want to know what people out there think. So Ashes for real, if you're watching this, type away. Ecstasy6999, please type away. The Smeghead, if you're watching, please type away. Catherine Waity, if that's your name, please type away. All of my subscribers who've seen this, please type away. And I'm going to be doing another video in a few minutes. I want to know what you lot will think. Let's go back and forth on this. And then my next video when it comes to MMA will be on, unless anything crazy happens, Cain Velasquez and Fedor. So get ready for that. And guys, take care. And oh yeah, one thing, if you're new to this, hit that little subscribe button. I do videos all the time. Take care.